Someone in your next meeting is going to say GRI, like everyone already knows what it means. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Either way, by the end of this video, you will. ESG has a vocabulary problem. Everyone throws around GRI, TCFD, CSRD like they're interchangeable. They're not. This is the glossary nobody hands you on day one, so let's fix that. Let's start simple. ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. 3 separate categories, not one blended idea. Environmental is the physical footprint, emissions, waste, water, biodiversity. Social is how people are treated, labor practices, community impact, worker health and safety. Governance is how decisions get made and held accountable, including who signs off on the other 2. Here's the thing to remember. ESG itself isn't a framework. It's a label. GRI, TCFD, and CSRD each cover pieces of it differently, and that's exactly where the confusion starts. So why does this actually matter on a real project? Clients and lenders increasingly require ESG disclosure as a condition of contract or financing. Some regulators now require it by law. We'll cover exactly how later in this playlist. Investors use it to assess risk, but that's one audience among several, not the only one. And if you work in environmental compliance, ISO 14001, LEED, Envision, you're often already doing ESG adjacent work, just without the label. This isn't a niche financial topic. It's already part of your job. Let's map the landscape. 6 names you'll hear most often: GRI, SASB, TCFD, CSRD, IFRS S1 and S2, and the EU Taxonomy. This is the index, not the deep dive. Think of it as knowing which shelf a book is on before you read it. One correction worth making right now. SASB merged into the IFRS Foundation back in 2022. If you learned it as a fully separate standard, that's outdated information. And only one of these 6 is actually a law, CSRD. Everything else here is voluntary or industry-driven. GRI, TCFD, and CSRD get a full comparison in the next video in this playlist. This slide is just your map. Here's the fastest way to sort any framework you hear about. Ask one question. Does a government enforce it, or does an organization choose it? Mandatory means it's written into law, with real penalties for skipping it and a specific legal scope of who has to comply. Voluntary means an organization adopted it because a client, an investor, or a certifier asked. There's no legal penalty for not doing it. But, and this matters, a framework can start voluntary and become mandatory over time. TCFD's own content is now legally required in some places, just through a different framework. This one distinction will resolve more ESG confusion than memorizing definitions ever will. 3 words get used like they're interchangeable, and they're really not. Framework is the overall structure for organizing what to report. Think GRI's topic standards. Standard is the specific, detailed rule inside that framework, like GRI 305, specifically for emissions. And regulation is a legal requirement from an actual government body. That's CSRD. Getting this distinction right isn't pedantic. It's often the exact difference between a report being accepted or rejected. Now, the single most important concept in this whole field, materiality. It asks one question: does this topic matter enough to actually report on? GRI looks at it through impact materiality. Does our project affect the world around it? TCFD and ESRS look at financial materiality. Does this risk affect our finances? And CSRD requires something bigger, double materiality. Both tests together for every single topic you report on. We're keeping this at the concept level here, The full mechanics, including the exact clause, are coming in the next video. For now, just remember there are two lenses, and CSRD is the only one that demands both. Two more terms worth locking in. Disclosure is simple. It's just the act of publishing the information, the report itself. Assurance is different. It's independent verification that what you disclosed is actually accurate. Not every framework requires assurance. Most voluntary ones don't. Mandatory ones, like CSRD, typically do. Quick tip: if a term in an ESG conversation ends in ants, it's usually doing real technical work, worth pausing on. Let's talk about climate risk, because that phrase is doing more work than people realize. Financial risk is the broad category, anything that threatens the organization's bottom line. Inside climate specifically, there are two flavors. Physical risk is direct: flooding, extreme heat, water scarcity hitting your actual site. Transition risk is indirect: policy changes, carbon pricing, markets shifting under a lower carbon economy. TCFD and ESRS both require you to assess both types, not just the obvious one. Together, that's what climate risk technically means, not just the weather's getting worse. Let's ground all of this in what actually happens on site. Real data gets collected first: waste volumes, emissions, incident logs, before any framework even enters the picture. That data gets organized under environmental, social, or governance. And here's the key part: the same data set gets formatted differently depending which framework is asking for it. Emissions categorization, Scope 1, 2, and 3, covered fully elsewhere in this playlist, is one piece nearly every framework wants, in some form. These frameworks are different lenses on one set of facts, not three separate jobs. One more mix-up, and it's the most common one in the entire field. ESG, sustainability, and CSR, same thing? Not quite. CSR, corporate social responsibility, came first. Broad, often voluntary, PR-adjacent commitments. Sustainability is the umbrella term for the underlying practice, environmental and social stewardship generally. ESG is the measurement and reporting layer, how that performance actually gets scored and disclosed. A company can do real CSR work with zero formal ESG reporting, and the reverse is true too. Using these three words interchangeably is the single most common vocabulary mistake you'll hear. Let's lock all of this in. One reference card, 9 terms. ESG, the 3-category label. Framework, standard, regulation. The structure, the specific rule, the legal requirement. Materiality, does it matter enough to report? Impact, financial, or double, which lens? Disclosure and assurance, publishing it and verifying it's true. Financial, physical, and transition risk, what climate risk actually splits into. Voluntary versus mandatory, chosen or legally required. And 6 names: GRI, SASB, TCFD, CSRD, IFRS S1 and S2, EU Taxonomy. 6 different jobs. When in doubt about any term in this field, ask what it actually does, not just what it stands for. The vocabulary sorted. Now we go deep. Next in this playlist, GRI versus TCFD versus CSRD. Full comparison, including the exact 2026 thresholds that decide who's actually in scope. EnviroVerge. Environmental knowledge, field ready.